Hey YouTube, JoBoy here. So, chapter 939 of One Piece is out. So if you haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. So this chapter brought us several talking points, and I just want to start off generally speaking with Haki. And I guess the first thing to say here is that Luffy using Future Sight Haki is so incredibly hype. For a while now, people have been arguing since the end of Whole Cake Island that Luffy doesn't have Future Sight Haki, even though it was essentially stated that he did. But they thought that he would have some sort of nerfed version or bastardized version of it, but nope. He pretty much uses it exactly the way that Katakuri does, and I really cannot tell much of a difference between Katakuri's masteries and Luffy's. But where we stand now, what I want on my wish list is for Luffy to actually be able to use this ability in some way that matters. It seems kind of like counterintuitive to say, but Future Sight Haki, as so far, doesn't really matter. I mean, the Katakuri fight, he used it in the Katakuri fight, but that was the fight's entire purpose was for him to learn that ability. It was essentially a training fight. And we've seen Luffy fight against Kaido here in Wano, and he had Future Sight Haki, and it mattered not. Kaido literally one-shot him, which means one of three things. Either Kaido also has this ability, and they cancel each other out. Perhaps Kaido has this ability to a greater level. Or Kaido is so fast that it literally does not matter if Luffy can see the future if he cannot react fast enough in order to stop Kaido from doing whatever it is that he wants to. I don't think that this is particularly likely, but it's a possibility. Or third, another thing that I don't believe, I just want to throw out there is that using some form of Haki or another, you can prevent your opponent from reading your future. So the simple answer here is that Kaido, just the same as Luffy, is able to see into the future using Observation Haki, which means that the entire purpose of having it for Luffy fighting Kaido and most likely any other Yonko tier caliber fighter is simply just to have it so you don't automatically lose. So yeah guys, again, my hope or my want is that there is a fight in this story which really, is a significant fight. It's a difficult fight, but yet requires Luffy to rely on his Observation Haki in some way that truly makes a difference. You can look at somebody potentially like Queen, but even Queen is allowing what is taking place to unfold. We know that Katakuri had Future Sight Haki, but none of the other Sweet Commanders do, so I think it's fair to guess that not every single one of Kaido's Yonko commanders are going to have this ability, but Queen, at the very least, does not seem concerned. I mean, he's observing everything that's taking place. He would see Luffy do things and say things that would only make sense if Luffy could see into the future, and he's not freaking out. But yeah, at this point, I would love Luffy to fight seriously a Yonko commander, and for Future Sight Haki to really matter. But yeah, this wasn't even the most important nugget about Haki that we got in this chapter. It has been confirmed after years of speculation that the breath of all things that Zoro described to us in the Alabasta arc is in fact a derivative of Haki. So yeah, in this chapter, Luffy was trying to figure out how to use the Armament Haki Blast. Grandpa Hio noticed this and tried to show him the way. And as he did so, he explained that this was actually a technique that in Wano, samurai used in order to cut steel or not cut something at their own discretion, which is something we have heard in the story of One Piece before, all the way back in Alabasta. This was something that Koshiro, Zoro-sensei, taught him, and was directly tied to Zoro experiencing what he described as the breath of all things. So back in Alabasta, when Zoro defeated Mr. One, he was in fact already using Haki. And so I really don't think that there's too much to be said about this. I mean, I think that this is all fairly straightforward. With typical armament or hardening Haki, you use this spiritual energy sort of to coat your body. And then in the case of the armament blast, then you just project it away from you. I think really where this conversation starts to get interesting is the possibility. I mean, if Zoro essentially had already tapped into Haki in Alabasta, and it was stated later on in the story that he was trying to figure out a way to use this ability more regularly, which would make sense because he still had this capability moving forward in the pre-time skip. But we get to an arc such as Eni's lobby in Water 7, Zoro has already sort of started to tap into Haki, and it makes you wonder whether Zoro's Asura form is also Haki related. Maybe that is the next evolution of Armament Haki that has not been officially described to us yet. And this would really set the stage for something cool. Now, I sort of want to describe your thoughts to me so that you're with me, so that you understand, but I could really see Asura being Haki now, more so than I have ever. Haki is described as a sort of invisible armor, which is malleable, and you can sort of move around and change its density. With the Armament Haki Blast, you can literally punch someone without actually touching them, like a giant invisible fist. If Hardening Haki can be described as mainly defensive Haki, then this blast would be the more offensive version. But this idea of a giant invisible fist I think is important if you're looking at something like Asura. And Zoro's Asura form, it appears as though, or what we are shown is Zoro essentially making duplicates of himself, multiple heads, extra arms, and this is something that seems possible if he is manipulating his malleable spirit. If you take away the specificity of how Oda decided to describe it and draw it, then you could say that he had multiple invisible arms and swords. Maybe you could even speculate or argue that at a certain concentration of spirit, these things almost appear to be real. They almost take a tangible form. And so why I think that this idea is so cool is it sets up the possibility that Luffy does something very similar to Zoro's Asura form in the future. Some sort of artistic representation of his spiritual armor. We've seen Luffy use his technique, the Gatling, since very near the beginning of the story, where he punches so fast that it appears as though he has multiple arms. But how cool would it be if we got, a visual representation of him using this blast-like armament Haki in a way that very much gives him extra arms that appear tangible and real? The same thing could very much be done with Gear 3rd. We're told that Luffy's abilities, using his double fruit, the way that he contorts his body, is a detriment to his health. But, theoretically, he could use his spiritual armor, his armament Haki, offensively, to mimic some of the things that he's shown throughout the story in a very different stylistically way. All you'd really need to do is change this invisible armament blast into something that appears to be real. Just the same as Zoro's Asura. Not gonna lie, the thought itself hypes me up. But yeah, moving on from this, I want to briefly mention Trafalgar Law's crew. It's just my opinion, guys, it's my impression, but this story about them being captured, and them worrying about people wondering whether or not they sold everybody out, but of course our captain would believe us, gives me the impression that that Law's not going to be very happy about everything that is going on. I think that we need to keep in mind that Law has, for the most part, trusted the Straw Hats to assist him in his plans and the survival of not only himself, but his crew. But at many points in time, it's clear that, he wonders just how serious they are and wonders, how smart he was to join forces with them. Completely at surface level, guys, since the beginning of Wano, I would say that Law has consistently been disappointed. They were told to stay low-key, and that was the first thing since arriving that they could not do. Added to the fact that somebody sold them out and his crew is being treated as they are now, this to me could very well lead into a story in which, there's some tension between Law and the Straw Hats. So far has been pretty continual fail. Now guys, I'm not sure exactly how far I want to take this right now, but it's just something to keep in mind. I'm all about patterns, and so far this is a developing pattern. Of course, we all want, and maybe some of us expect, Law to remember Dressrosa and just realize that, don't doubt the Straw Hats, in the end they will succeed, but he may not be there yet, and so seeing all this failure could be very disheartening. And this is without mentioning that Law, I don't think yet knows that Big Mom is in Wano, and we assume at some point that she will regain her memories, and if that moment happens, then again, that's testing how much loyalty Law will have for the Straw Hats. Food for thought. But yeah, talking about Kawamatsu, a little bit more was revealed about Kawamatsu in this chapter, and it almost straight up says, as we speculated, that he is a Kappa. Like the real deal. But at the same time, they call him a Kappa, and they make us believe that he is a real Kappa, but yet Oda still will not show us what he looks like. Straight up, guys, the Kappa looks really, really strange. It is a strange looking mythical creature, but I want you guys to prepare for something stranger, or something unexpected. The thing is, guys, I'm just trying to make sense of why In words, you would essentially tell us what he looks like. If you're calling him a legit Kappa, then all you need to do is go into Google, look up Kappa, see what they look like. Okay, that is what Kawamatsu looks like. But at the same time, Oda will not show his face, which leads me to believe that he's not going to look exactly as we would expect a Kappa to look. And it may in fact be significantly different. So a couple weeks ago when it was first sort of hinted at that he might be Kappa related, we talked about him potentially being a Kappa and also having inspiration of possibly an otter mink, given how, I guess how you could interpret his name, Kawamatsu. Both of these theories are still definitely in play because we don't know exactly if he is a Kappa or not, right? The people of Wano may think that he is, but that does not automatically make him one. Either way, guys, Oda is definitely hyping me up for Kawamatsu's design because he's really drawing it out. But yeah, I guess the last thing from this chapter that we need to talk about is Komurasaki/Hiyori. I think I'm going to make an entire video about her, so I'll hold some of the things I have to say for now, just because I think that there's some things going on here that beg questions. But I guess first things first, was anybody else reading this chapter? Obviously, the point of it was to sell Komurasaki as Hiyori, which it did a very good job of doing that. But I personally was very much weirded out by the way that she was acting. It felt very, very forced and strange. I got huge pudding vibes. Is anybody else there with me? And so here's the thing, guys. If Komurasaki had always acted this way, or acted somewhere similar to this, then I could buy it. But it's just so very strange. Remember, when Komurasaki was first introduced into the story, she was essentially tricking people into believing that she had fallen in love with them so that she could steal their money and then leave them destitute. She was straight up cruel. And we're not really given a motive behind why she would feel the need to act this way. Now, there is at least at this point 2 ways that I'm willing to speculate this. We'll do that in another video. But what I want to say for now is be very, very skeptical of her. From the moment that she was introduced, the story was essentially saying that she is not to be trusted, that she is an actress and is willing to lie. If she's this good and this pure of heart, she doesn't need to act cruel and need to ruin people's lives in order to keep up some kind of facade. It's not necessary. We need to understand why she was acting this way. I really do feel like that there is a whole lot more story to tell as far as Komurasaki Hiyori goes. But yeah, guys, that is pretty much what I had to say today. As always, I'm curious as to what you guys think, whether you noticed something from the chapter that I may have missed. Just share your thoughts. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video. Make sure to subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content. And as always, guys, have a wonderful day.